So 3 minutes after, let's start. So hello and welcome everybody to this Open Tech Talk for the Software Weekly of the Future Community organized by the FEDERATE project. So today we have a presentation from the initiative Ecosystem Mobility 4.0 with the title Building an Open Digital Platform for Autonomous Mobility. The presenter is Alexander Field from FZI. So I would say I hand over to you. Can you share your slides?
Yes, thank you. Very good.
Welcome.
So I hope that you see my slides now.
Yes.
Okay, great. So welcome to my presentation. It's called Ecosystem Mobility 4.0, and it's about digital technologies for the transformation of the mobility system. If you would like to phrase the core objective, this is establish autonomous driving as a long-term pillar of Germany's economic and industrial base in Europe. There's two aspects on it. So the initiative was officially started, let's call it, this year in January. But we've been initiating discussions already end of 2024 by some observations we made. So maybe some of you know it. There's usually in the end of the year there's a conference in Germany on autonomous and connected mobility, mainly initiated by the three major German ministries that are responsible for this topic on automotive and autonomous driving and so on. And during the conference, usually there's a lot of experts giving talks, but also funding projects showing what they achieved. And if you had a look at this conference on the one hand, and on the other hand, what you've seen in the news was the observation that, yes, Europe is at the risk of falling behind or has fallen behind in a lot of areas. And especially those international players that are not from Europe took over in lots of these innovation areas, so AI, but also autonomous driving. The second point is that it's necessary to have really a market for automated mobility. We've seen this in a lot of the projects on public transportation, for example, that you have the problem. On the one hand, you don't have vehicles or nobody's producing vehicles. Sorry, did you? No. Okay. On the one hand, there were no vehicles available because all the manufacturers said, okay, there's nobody who would pay us maybe or buy 100,000 automated vehicles. And on the other side, we had lots of discussions about, yes, there were, for example, the public transportation operators that said, okay, we have demands on 20, 50, 80, 100 autonomous vehicles, for example, but nobody's offering this. And this means to develop this market, which is currently, at least in Germany, very fragmented. We had some pilot project and some proprietary individual solution, but is not really a market for automated mobility. And then the third aspect that motivates us, or we saw there a gap, is the very low interoperability. This means there's no standard, for example, on the creating the vehicles, for example, if you want to operate a fleet, let's say if it's freight or if it's also public transportation or other things, you need some kind of background system. For example, in public transportation, usually you have the disposition of the vehicles, the driver, the trip planning, and so on. And all the things we've seen from pilots or projects did not yet have a standard in order to integrate arbitrary vehicles from arbitrary vendors into such a system. So this means basically we want to have scalable, interoperable ecosystems and technological building blocks for new markets, but also for new business models, a basis for a long-term value creation for Germany and Europe as a business location itself. And all should rely on open reference architectures and open reference integration system, as well as some open source autonomous driving stack, which could then serve, if everything is open, as a digital starter package for arbitrary new mobility innovations. This means at this point, it's more innovation instead of basic technology development or research for achieving self-sufficiency on the European level. So this is the motivation where we come from. And the vision is establish a so-called ecosystem mobility 4.0. So if you're asking, there hasn't been ecosystem mobility 3.0 or below, so this 4.0 should show that it's industrialized as an operating system for the autonomous mobility of tomorrow. One of the core aspects is to pool knowledge, laying foundation, enable value creation, but also at the end scaling up the solutions that are made for really going to big markets. And there should be the main push should be innovation from industry, with the industry, and for the industry. So no academic basic research, which is necessary and should be integrated, but really the industry pushing forward. The mission we try is to really to enable the industry, but also public authority and other stakeholders around is to really make interoperable and scalable, highly automated and autonomous mobility solutions with all these open patterns, open integration architectures, shared rules, pooled knowledge, open data, and so on. And we would like to shape this ecosystem as some kind of independent institution, maybe foundation, which provides, let's say, the central contact point of orientation and connectivity if, for example, stakeholders want to get into this market, also into this collaboration aspect. Yes, as I said, it should create an independent and open integration foundation for building blocks, open source building blocks for mobility, similar to some of the aspects we're also targeting in the FEDERATE project. And those building blocks should provide automated and autonomous mobility, for example, architectures, rules, strategic guidelines, and so on. For example, also business model templates for scaling up successfully. And the third one, which is very important and which we are currently very emphasizing on, is to build a community structure and to develop integration and reference architectures, all relying on open technology and on open building blocks, but also on the other hand, have regulatory and economic frameworks, and to link from the piloting on the knowledge development, but also to the transfer. What is the main approach? The main approach is to bring the different stakeholders you need for this vision together as a community. The first step is to get in discussion and to really identify the relevant use cases that are very typical, that are very practice relevant, and also how to integrate different building blocks into some kind of overall architecture, including governance of an ecosystem. The second point for the community is to establish a collaborative development and the integration of building blocks. The third aspect is then rather the transfer. This means the empowerment of the companies or the operators of mobility systems by digital means, which also means strengthening the digital economy. But also, which is very important, so for example, I also gave a talk about ecosystem mobility during the ECAVA event, I think it was in February. This means to align with different initiatives, national, even on the state level, but also on the international level, because usually it's not all just driven by companies and different stakeholders, but at some point, as all of you, I think, know, there's a role of public funding. And what we've seen in the past is there's lots of small activities were funded, maybe very similar to each other on the European level, on the national levels, and so on. But there should be an alignment that you don't spend the euro twice for maybe the similar or the same thing. And this is one of the very important aspects also of the ecosystem. That's why also, for example, why I'm talking here. And yes, and it's a very open community. So if you want to be committed and you want to be actively contribute, you can scan this QR code, but also at the end, I will have some of the addresses you can use for getting in touch with the ecosystem. Key focus of the ecosystem is an integration. This means an integration on different levels. It's about integration of the different actors, of the players, of the roles into the technical domains, but also in, for example, in governance. It's about integration of data, which means, for example, to make data reliable, to make data understandable, to make data exchangeable. Then on top, because depending on the business case, you would set on top of this, let's say rather technical systems, there need to be agreements which shouldn't be prevented by some regulations that are made by the ecosystem, but they don't fulfill, let's say, new ideas for making business. You should also be able to integrate legacy, so old systems, but also new developments. Be open and flexible in order, for example, if new requirements arise or new standards arise, for example, protocols or whatever. You should always have in mind that on the European level, we have some regulations that are implemented on the different national levels in a different way. But however, yes, everything should be legal compliant, which is also yes, a big area of discussion. The solutions derived should be stable and have a long-term strategy, although they will be still evolving. And one of the things I said, we want to have this digital starter package. That's why we will develop a lot of open source basic blocks that allow market entrance, yes, in kind of a quick start. The way this should be done is, yes, is a very transformative way. Before we've seen there's a lot of investment in technology development. Now it should be go to the application of the technologies and linking before isolated solution components. But also, if there still exists technology gaps, they need to be closed. The second point is what we've also seen from a lot of research projects is that when the research is done, maybe the results are not used anymore. This means to really increase the usability and also promoting what has been done and also the concepts lying behind. Like, for example, also components and solutions that are available that are hopefully also usable due to the legal requirements, but also to the license policies and so on. And especially also lower the barriers for the market entry from the regulation perspective and the protection mechanisms, but also, for example, from this ecosystem, and then the market is ready, for example, by providing standard interfaces to integrate systems and components on the different levels. For example, how if you would like to bring up a new automated, maybe a cargo truck, and you would like to integrate it into the background system, how do those interfaces look like? And if you're successful in providing or in developing one very good product, how can you scale it to really get to a big market and not to have a market of maybe 5 vehicles? And what we've seen before is that, yes, some of the market conditions are not suitable for really making a business case, and that's why it's also exploiting opportunities for vendor-neutral market conditions and, yes, foundations for new business models. So this means eliminate, yes, blockers for really a market entry and marketing of what comes out of such project and the global initiative. The central aim, and then I will go to more, let's say, technical details, is, yes, to really put together the different work efforts to a resilient work organization, to bring the right partners together. This means to bring the right stakeholders in different topic areas together to work really focused and collaborative on the most important point, on top priorities in their specific field of action, to also create a community feeling. For example, in February, we had a meeting in Cologne where we initiated a community and currently we also have working groups running on, and a lot of exchanges in the different working groups. This means also to work together and see that it's beneficial for all the persons that are involved. So yes, together it's better than doing something alone. Then the next point is, basically the starting point of the initiative was mainly driven by the German Ministry of Economic Affairs, supported by the Ministry of Research and the Ministry of Transportation. But it was from the beginning on, it's clear that it should not be a German story. This means we also want to do internationalization, for example, towards ICAVA and all the other, let's see, at least European level initiatives. Also to stimulate a supplier market, so the German market from the provider perspective, but also from the user perspective is too small, and the larger the market, the more suppliers will enter it. But also we want to have this big space between public affairs down to really technology. This should be included and also into the different working areas if there's really a technological value creation in the specific market areas, but this will be on the next slide. And especially then, last but not least, to create some market structures for autonomous driving. This means not just suppliers, not just providers, but also the market, for example, also the demand and how, for example, specifying which characteristics a vehicle must have for heavy duty, for public transportation, for individual transportation, for having some robo taxis also on should look like. So this is kind of the still very high level central aims of this initiative's ecosystem mobility 4.0. And then we had an initial structuring in different areas of activity, meaning for main pillars. I will just try to get this here. This means the first pillar is the offering and operation. The second pillar is the vehicle infrastructure, safety and security, and the processes for the development of this vehicle and the infrastructure. Then there's a third pillar on regulation and market, and then also a pillar on piloting and scaling. And horizontally across those pillars, there's the tool and references, which includes reference architectures and kits, the integration architecture, and also data for that are used across those pillars. If you have a look at this, you can see that some of the pillars are more related to technologies. There are others are rather, let's say, enablers. So in this first pillar, we are talking about the ODD of the different vehicles and how this relates to the offers. Also, then bridging over to the, for example, business model. Then there's also here a technical aspect about fleet management and how to operate fleets in order, for example, to target some ODDs for the fleets. And then also how to integrate the users, user participation, integration of the users, but also interfaces for integrating the users and then also the operators of the mobility systems. For the second point, I have some more detailed slides because those might be of most interest for this group here. That's why I will jump on to the third on this slide. It's about, yes, it's regulation and the market. So there's working groups on regulatory frameworks, what needs to be changed, what can be recommended to the different regulation bodies on the European and the national level. Then about business models, kind of the fundamentals, but also the full cost analysis of mobility services, how this can be performed and where there are really business models that are promising. Then there's the working group on economic framework conditions for digital value creation and digital products. And then there's also this working group or the think tank about technology scaling, product scaling, and the market development that should pave the ground for a market that you can really sell the products that result from the technological activities. And then there's this pillar about piloting and scaling. This means there needs to be a piloting of the systems and also some support, because especially if you imagine there's an SME that would, for example, commercialize one of the open source components that are developed in the ecosystem. And then the question is, yes, how to test whether it fits the requirements, how to get new impulses maybe for additional features and so on. So there's, at least in Germany, there's so it's called model regions, maybe a kind of some regulatory sandboxes or additional infrastructure that supports the testing and the rollout of systems. And this will be done in this first part of this piloting and scaling. Then there's also a lot of knowledge created by different activities, by the different topic areas, but also by maybe funding projects that are in this area. And as in this topic area is about build knowledge, to specify it, to create, for example, appropriate training material, and then foreign transfer, especially to the operators, but also to the users of the technologies. And then there's a working group that works on KPI-based evaluation. This means, okay, what needs to be done, what needs to be fulfilled, which KPIs need to be met by a technological building block or a project to really have a chance on the market. Yes, and then there's this, yes, and tools and references, especially with reference architectures, which could be, for example, reference architecture for an integration of the systems, for example, for the integration of automated buses in the public transportation sector, but also, for example, yes, some reference integration kits, for example, for testing, for example, the interfaces a component or a system has in order to be qualified or pre-qualified for an integration or a test at the piloting and the scaling sites. Yes, and now let's get back to the second pillar, which is rather about the vehicle, the infrastructure, the safety and the security, as well as AI-supported processes. So the first pillar in this area is the AD system itself. And this should really shape the foundation for automated and autonomous driving. And in that area, there's really the technology development and provision for all the relevant system components that the vehicle needs for autonomous driving. This means, on the one hand, let's say the algorithms, the autonomous driving stack, but also on the other side, for example, the SDV system. And I think this is a very strong relation to what we're doing here in the FEDERATE, but also in projects such as Halt for SDV or Shift to SDV. Yes, the software that comes out of this, and this is always the discussion, because if you say you're providing open source, but open source, yes, may have arbitrary qualities, and there's about really high-performance software that runs on custom-made hardware components that really fulfills on a functional level, but also, let's say, for example, on a real-time level, reliability level, the basic needs for autonomous driving. And the result of this topic area, which I'm co-leading with a colleague from Aachen, is a robust integrated autonomous driving system that provides technical foundation for really having or being applied or deployed to different platforms for automated mobility. Yes, so this is one of the working groups that is really actively working already so far since in February with weekly meetings and so on. And I think we already made there already very good progress. The second point is, let's say, what you need to ensure the safety of this AD system, apart from the let's say, the algorithms which are covered by the AD system. So there it's about robust architectures and implementations for functional safety on the component level, but also on the overall architecture level, which is often, yes, also going down to the, so in the SDV world, you would say also to the flow cycle of the SDVs. Yes, and the basic there, not surprising, is risk assessment, and then also providing software and hardware components as well as tools in order to, yes, model the safety architecture, but also to deploy the right component to the right system. Yes, and yes, as in several areas, but especially there, it's the compliance with the standards. So in order to really be applicable to bring the vehicles safety to the open roads. The third pillar in this area is digital infrastructure. So we're also thinking there about going away from the ego perspective of the vehicle, that the vehicle must be always able to do everything on its own and decide on its own. So this can be additional information provided by the infrastructure, for example, by traffic light systems, but also, for example, by traffic management, if it's about to select the right way to get to the target. But there are also, which was in the first pillar, to have a look at remote operation, remote support of the vehicles. Yes, and this should, in the end, supply the vehicle with a more robust operation, with a better operation, with a more high performance operation. For example, also by using sensor information provided by the infrastructure. For example, if there's a complex traffic jam situation, or if there has been an accident, and the vehicle should, somehow drive around this accident without knowing what's behind there. The fourth area of action in this pillar is the V&V methods and tools. I think there's also been a lot of research on the European level, on the national level, but it's really here to make V&V methods overarching over different implementation of, for example, AD systems, over different principles of the AD system, for example, to having some conservative AD system versus to have some end-to-end AD system, or AD system relying on vision level action models, and so on and so on. So this is really about interfaces, but also to integrate to the best of the knowledge the tools, simulations, and so on, in order to get the V&V and later on the support for the homologation of the autonomous driving functions and systems. And last but not least, it's also, as you know, and the European Commission also had taken over this point, that it's also the time of AI, not to be just into the systems, but also to support, develop the system. So this means the process automation based on AI for the development, for the testing, for the operation, and so on of the autonomous driving or the autonomous mobility, to make them more efficient, to make the components, the processes, and the operational workflow more better in different aspects. And I think this is, I think, also one of the topics that has been addressed by the European Commission in one of the recent calls, and I think that this German initiative also supports this European initiative in order to bring more AI into the development of the system and the testing and the operation and so on. So to automate or to support the automation of the complete DevOps cycle using AI. Yes, and this already concludes my quick insight. I might have 30 or 40 more slides, but maybe it's better to get into more interaction and maybe questions and answers. For the ecosystem mobility, I also put there two two links. One is the information email you can use, even if it's just a German domain, but you can also write there in English to get some answers. And in parallel, we also have the website Ecosystem Mobility 4.0, which is available in English as well. And we are currently adding a lot of topic which has been elaborated in the different working groups from time to time. So thank you for listening to, yes, it's to the last 30 minutes, and now I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for this great presentation. So are there questions from the audience? You can see the list, and the meanwhile it can be the icebreaker. So it sounds very interesting. So this initiative, one question about the working model. So you expect here open source contributions to that?
Yeah.
And who is paying for that? Is that coming from funding projects, or do you expect that companies are contributing?
So basically, there's no limitation. So what we started, and I think that's what I try to make clear, is at first, for example, I'm talking about the AD system, because we are in the leadership for this activity. This means that first we gathered persons or entities that are interested in autonomous driving, for example, either on the user side or on the provider side. And then there's this discussion, okay, what are the primary use cases, at least from this group? So for example, we saw use cases in robotaxis and also in heavy duty vehicles as example. And then there's the question, what is available and where are the gaps? The discussion, do we rely on existing implementations, let's say big project like Apollo, Autoware, whatever, or do we need to start something new? And if starting something new would be an opinion, why? Is it maybe the governance of a project? What should be changed? Is it maybe the quality or the technical approach or whatever? And what we did there, for example, also was a gap analysis. What is really missing and how to prevent it, and then maybe make a recommendation to funding bodies to fund something or to hop on an initiative. Then the question would be how to get into this initiative. And currently we gather there around maybe 40 partners, where we are on the one hand discussing some of these high-level topics, for example, development roadmaps and feature roadmaps, and on the other hand, let's say low-level, rather going how does the governance and the repository work, how should it be the legal, what is the open source license, and so on. But basically this is a community, and we also have some recommendations or requirements that we pose to the other working areas, for example, to the V&D group. And we also discussed today in one of the meetings about how do we get the right data, let's say the long tail data and so on. So this is basically it's a community, and within this community we also have some subgroups. Some groups are rather prone to coding, and others are rather high level to policy. But this is then still this topic area AD system, and we also have this interaction with the different topic areas. Yeah. So that's the basic how it works. And we are also, for example, because we're lacking a little bit on OEMs, we have tier ones in the group. Then it's the question, for example, what could be the points to get more input from OEMs, for example, in their specific requirements on gaps they see and so on. So this is kind of the working model. But basically, if there are gaps and gaps cannot be closed because it would be a very high effort, then there would be the question maybe still to get back to one of the solutions that are maybe disqualified at the beginning. Maybe you can somehow circumvent the shortcomings, or really to start, to discuss about starting something from scratch again, because you would make it better this time.
Great, thanks. Another question, so this AD stuff, or this AD stack is on top of this, let's say, middleware activities, which are driven by this SDVoF of the future community, or this SCORE and so on. Are there discussions ongoing to align at least at API level or something like that, so that can be used together?
Yes. So we had this discussion. So basically, there's not only this one activity. For example, within our group, we also had a startup from Germany that also provides some very slim SDV infrastructure, at least to have some of the features from the requirements towards an SDV. But yes, one of the next points when we really get to the, let's say, the coding of the AD stack, it's one of the next. So we have this regular meeting, and usually we have a backlog of around 5 or 6 topics. But for the last topic we discussed, we needed 3 weeks. So this is we're really pushing. So we started this regular meetings mid of February, and we met every week. So this is one of the next points. And they would also, for example, then discuss how should the interfaces look like? What about S-Core? What about other activities? And how to align and maybe make it a little bit abstracted from one specific implementation of such a stack, but still then provide maybe the knowledge on how to adapt it if you have different environments. For example, a comparison between large projects such as S-Core or, for example, the vehicle group we had in the first discussions on the German side.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks. Also, maybe if you have some building blocks, you can also contribute them to the, to the FEDERATE GitHub repo.
Yes, that's we're in discussion, and I think also during the this presentation from FEDERATE, we also had it in this group. Many of the partners were surprised about that FEDERATE exists, which is also already good, and we also identified some potential projects that could be contributed to the FEDERATE repository.
Great. So are there questions from the audience? So don't be shy. Didn't seem to be the case. So I think the contacts are there. So if you have questions later on, you can share that also via mail or other channels. So then thank you again, Alexander, for this great presentation. You share the slides with us, you said?
Yes, I will share them with you directly afterwards.
Upload the records to the, let's say, YouTube channel of FEDERATE. Okay, so then thank you very much, everybody. And one announcement maybe. So next week there is the next Open Tech Talk, and that's coming from the Autoware Foundation. So if you're interested also in what Andreas have mentioned, others, stack or kit, so we have the co-founder and I think chairman, the current chairman, and he gave us an introduction about what they offer. So invitation is coming in the next hours. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.